Welcome to The Outlet, where we keep you plugged in to everything energy. To lead the charge, here's your host, Tom Glanzer.
Well, it's another episode of The Outlet, and this time we get to talk about the ground, the earth, the environment. It's my tree hugger episode, I think. Sady Babcock joins us. She's our director of environmental permitting. And are you a tree hugger at heart?
Oh, absolutely not.
You're not?
No. No. I'm a natural resource. I would say I dabble in the wise use of our natural resources.
So you're a conservationist. You're a proponent, yes. and you're the one that has the information that knows how we need to use things wisely. Correct?
Sure. Yep.
Sure.
Sure.
So Sady is based out of our Butte, Montana office, but really your whole kind of career and everything started just up the road a little bit. One of my favorite places in Montana, Missoula, with really some ag-based type activities.
Yep. I worked for the Missoula Conservation District doing conservation planning on private landowners for ranches, which included developing grazing systems, hayfield rehabilitation, irrigation systems, spring developments, range management, all kinds of multiple projects, and permitting. We have a local state permit, natural resource permit that for stream crossings that I administered that program as well. So
how do you go from the ag and tell me kind of how you got into the utility business and how it's taken you where you are now?
Well, my 13 years at the Conservation District, I got my degree from Montana State University in agriculture and went to work for them for 13 years. And then kind of got, I would say, discouraged with working for the government. We were also with the NRCS and just wanted to expand my horizons. And so I was offered a job with a private consulting firm. And that took me to a lot of Indian reservations. We worked on the Standing Rock Sioux, did a lot of range inventory. So I spread my wings across the West, if you will. I worked in doing environmental impact statements on the Shasta Trinity National Forest and the Klamath National Forest. We did projects in spotted owl habitat, thinning projects for fuels reduction. So a lot of great adventures, a lot of planning, scenic byway plans in that position, as well as we provided permitting support for various companies across the West for complying with environmental permitting.
Your resume reads like the places you want to visit on Earth, right? Especially in the Mountain West area.
And some that are a little sketchy. So. But my background is in agriculture. Still have a family ranch that I work on and help my sisters and brothers run. And so, let's say, to get into the utility industry, I wasn't really looking to get into the utility industry, but my parents were getting elderly. I wanted to get. It was time that somebody came back to the ranch and kind of was just there to make sure the ovens got turned off and everything was okay. So I saw this job for Northwestern Energy, and I thought, well, I'll apply for it, but never thinking I'd get a call. Well, I got the call, and at 50, I moved home with my parents and started working with Northwestern, and that allowed me to be able to be with them in their later years as they aged, and just have somebody there with the day-to-day, with them.
Yep, the children coming back to parent the parents, and that's
yep.
Or help parent the parents.
Yep.
Anyways.
Yep.
So just some of the roles that you've had at Northwestern and some of the projects you've been involved with over the last, was it 13? How many years now?
12 years.
12 years, yeah, 13
yep.
almost.
I started as the environmental permitting specialist, so I got to know a lot of the folks, the engineers. Probably our biggest client in the company was the gas transmission, and that's just the nature of the disturbance of the work that they're doing. So probably the first project I worked on was the Warren to Billings transmission reroute project. and that entailed, some wildlife survey habitats. We had to do a stormwater pollution prevention plan. We had to get 310 permits, floodplain permits. So that was, a project that was, basically we covered every environmental permit that you needed throughout the state, as well as it had some federal BLM lands that we had to cross. So that was one of the projects. And there was a lot of electric transmission projects that we worked on. Columbus to Chrome Junction was probably the first new power line project that we worked on. Again, I did all the environmental permitting for that. We had some Corps of Engineer permits for floodplain, or not floodplain, wetland crossings. We also had a BLM portion that we had to cross, so we had to do an environmental assessment for that. And again, stormwater plans and prevention. And so those were two of the biggest projects that I've worked on. And then there's onesies, twosies, electric distribution, a lot of projects there. So those are the main, kind of the day-to-day stuff that I worked on, getting multiple permits in the environmental realm.
One of my favorite things about our company is the purchasing back of the dams, and obviously the deregulation, and we got rid of those and then get them back. I have to think that was one of those things that you're like, okay, this is a big project for me. And how invested are you in those dams and what we have going on, and just the asset that we have there?
Well, that was probably I think in 2013 when I started, is right when we acquired those. So I got in on the ground floor of basically the acquisition. Wasn't involved in much of the due diligence, but then, was able to, after we had acquired them, started going around because there was some environmental permitting that they needed to do. So I was able to go through some of those facilities and just in total awe. I mean, they're amazing. And yeah, I mean, to me, they're probably the coolest asset we have. And very vested in making sure that, they continue to produce power and for the next 100 years. And the environmental work we have to do on those is always, challenging, because just getting to them and getting the work done, as well as, the cultural side of those, the historic buildings. And so that's something else we have to deal with in those hydro projects.
And if you think of the generation that we own, it is the one piece of equipment that we have where our employees, operational type employees, are really, they're there. They're set right there. And when you have the coal-fired, the wind, the solar, the gas-fired, those are not living organisms, right?
Yep.
When you think about the water, the fish, the wildlife that surrounds it, the rivers that, I mean, the people that work on those are absolutely in tune with exactly what is going on in nature and environmentally. And how stressful is that when you are the one that's kind of charged with making sure that we do the right things, that we use those rivers and dams and waterways the correct way? Because that, you think about the things that we do as a company and the things we're responsible for, that one piece of the puzzle is so paramount to so many people, not only in Montana, but you follow that river right into South Dakota and all the way down. I mean, that's an amazing responsibility to have.
Absolutely, and I give all of the credit for that to our hydro compliance group, who is one of the groups under me. That's Andy Welch and George Olson, John Hansen, Grant Gershick, and then Joe, and but there's a whole team, and all they do is the hydro license compliance, and it's a huge lift, and it has the Missouri, the 2188 Missouri to Madison, just the recreation stuff that we do, the fisheries, those guys do phenomenal work with that is license compliance. They're out they're out there in the middle of the night, doing fish counts, doing shocking, doing, bug counts, as well as in the community. Andy's involved in the invasive species board for the state. Those guys just have a tremendous amount of work that they do for the environment for those rivers. The Madison, which is obviously a very popular fisheries. Those guys,
Yep.
manage that with releases and temperatures, and just do a phenomenal job of working environmentally conscious and on those, and kind of basically paying our dues for using that water for generation.
Do you think the general public has much of an idea as to how much you do put into our care of the waterways and of the dams and of even, you even think about ground and things like that? That to me is something that it just happens and I kind of don't pay attention to it, really.
Yeah, probably the biggest area where, yes, I think they do is the Madison, and it's just due to an active outreach program. People are very involved, and of course we had the Hebgen issue where basically the river dried up, and those guys, of course the public came out. They were very upset, but it was handled very well. So people got to know, our biologists, and we were out there, in the creek, so as well as our CEO at the time,
Yep.
doing some mitigations there. And so probably at the Madison, in that drainage is probably the biggest, where people realize what we do and how much we do. I would say probably not as much on the, the bigger, Missouri River, Thompson Falls. Other than, we've got signage and the amount of recreation monies that we, put at, campgrounds and various places, boat launches. It's basically a sign, but behind there's a huge lift that we probably people just don't realize how much money, how much time we put into managing those resources and partnering with, obviously BLM and
Yep.
Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks. And, we fund biologists and all kinds of things. So
As you look back over your career, and we still have years to go, so don't think you're going anywhere. Yeah. As you look back, what is that one project that you're most proud of, or kind of a pet project you had?
I'd have to say probably at this point the Columbus to Chrome Junction transmission line. Just to be able to start a project, and drive the route. We're in the open range lands and, deep canyons, and think, oh, there's no way you can build a power line through here, and just getting that done and permitted. And then probably the Yellowstone generating station. We had some permitting challenges there, and, we prevailed for the most part on that. And so those were probably two of the biggest projects that had the most impact.
And when you look at Yellowstone, really, that project now, that really is the bridge that's going to take us from, say, a coal-fired generation base to whatever the next technology is. So that's one of those, that's very important.
Yep.
Talk about the future, what things you're looking at, what things we're working on, and kind of what keeps you up at night knowing that this is something we have to tackle, this is something we have to be great on, and this is something that the people of Montana, South Dakota, Nebraska, Wyoming expect us?
There's a lot of projects, potentials for, increasing our capacity on the natural gas end of things, storage, obviously some huge transmission projects that are coming down the pike. Probably what keeps me up at night is dealing with our regulators. There's so much turmoil in them now, not understanding whether we're going to get projects permitted, easements approved, just due to the turnover and the different administration, and well, of course, always the risk of litigation. Every time we apply for something through the federal permitting process, there's somebody watching us, and knowing that So trying to do everything environmentally, upfront. We tend to do, for a lot of these bigger projects, do baseline environmental reports to inform us. Is there a critical environmental or cultural something out there that as we plan this project that we can avoid those or mitigate them by going around them? Trying to do everything we can to apply for a project and hopefully not get litigated, although, obviously you can't guarantee that, but someone's going to litigate everything we do, but, just trying to do the best we can for the natural resources and before we go into development.
Do you think the education piece, you think of commissioners and we've always said this company is a group of humans and we really are, our goal is safe, affordable, reliable energy and energy on demand and things like that. Do you think sometimes the education piece that you do, that we try to do as a company, maybe just doesn't even get heard by some people? And what could we do to maybe even further that message?
You just got to keep hammering away at people. You do maybe an education thing, and it just seems like we've got so much. Our communities are changing. There's a lot of people move in, move out that don't understand the utility business. And I think just continuing to be involved in the communities, attending like our county commissioner meetings, public outreach, just in my experience working on a project I'm working on now, this Helena to Three Forks, the dealing with the BLM and showing them some of the things we do. Those folks, that are in the natural resource management of the federal lands are just floored that, they have no idea that we actually do this stuff, that we think about this before we go and build a project environmentally. And, I guess you can tell people that, and just as much as you can. That's a tough one. Just our community service and getting our face out there in the community that we are, like you said, we are employees and humans and users of this land, and just hammering that home.
Yeah, I think the responsibility of our generation, really, our grant, our business is 100 years old, and we're really that first 100 years really took us up until about the last decade. And you think about what you and I are going to leave, that's kind of the next 100 years. And what you're doing is paramount, because what you're doing has a lasting impact on everyone that's going to use that land, or everyone that's going to go by that land, and every animal and every waterway. And that's pretty amazing. It's pretty humbling when you think about the responsibility that we have, and we don't take it lightly. And that's one thing that I think with your passion and what you've shown, what you do, that's something that you have to take great pride in.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I live it every day. On our ranch, we've got to take care of that, because that, if we don't, it doesn't take care of you. And I feel the same way in the utility business. We're going to use this land. Let's try and leave it a little bit better than when we got there, whether it's, digging a pipeline in, or even, building our transmission lines. Let's make them bird friendly, and let's do everything we can to mitigate any damage that we may do to the environment. And, just that's what you have to do if you want to survive.
And I think when we do talk about what we do, I think people listen, and I think people understand that we are making every effort we can to make things, good, and make sure that everybody has that electricity like they need, and natural gas like you want, at the right time for the right price, with the least amount of impact, and knowing what our impact could be going into things. And I think that's, having the foresight to do what you do is pretty incredible. And we're lucky to have you around. Obviously, we appreciate what you do. Real quick before we go here, tell us about the operation, the farm. That's a passion of yours. You've been there.
Oh, it's a huge passion.
I'm a South Dakotan, so no matter if you raise cattle or crops, we call it a farm. So, but you guys are ranchers out west, right?
Yep. It's a family ranch. It's been in the family for 150 years. So we're currently the generation that is tasked with maintaining it, and we put up about 400 or 500 acres of hay, wild hay, and then we also graze about 500 cows on it.
And who homesteaded it? 150 years what's the story
Henrietta
there?
Schneppel was her name, and she had come, I believe, from Germany, and ended up marrying great. I don't know if it's uncle of mine, but uncle or grandfather or. And then they homesteaded. It was called the Cottonwood Farms at the time, and they were doing dairy, I believe dairy to feed the miners, because silver was a big thing in Phillipsburg at that time. And then from then on, they expanded it into cattle, and over the years we've added acreage and for the place it is today. And then my mother, she was when she met my father, she was at Washington State University, and was one of the first women to graduate in animal husbandry, and met him and ended up being a rancher and doing what they loved, and they expanded the ranch, and it's a legacy that is a big weight on our shoulders to maintain that legacy and take care of it, and it's a beautiful place, and we're very fortunate.
Can you look back on your youth and say, this absolutely turned me into the person I am and put me on the career path I am?
Oh, you bet. Absolutely. I'm 7 of 8 children. And they said the last couple of us children were feral because, when you're that far down the pecking order. And, we had a great childhood. I mean, it taught us independence, and we had to figure things out. Because if you got yourself in a pickle, if you didn't run home to mom and dad and say, I just tipped the pickup over or got stuck in the irrigation ditch, you figured out how to get yourself out and move on. And absolutely.
Well, I appreciate your time, Sady. We appreciate all you do. We know it is tireless work. We know sometimes it's thankless work too, but the best interest of the land, the best interest of the people and the company and everything is out there. Yeah, that's super cool. Sady Babcock was our guest. I want to thank Lori Nelson, for our producers. She's like, you got to talk to Sady Babcock. You got to bring her on the show and talk through the environmental stuff. And, if anything ever comes up in the future, we'll bring you back on. I think that'd be interesting. And you talked about Yellowstone and things like that. That it's one of those things that a lot of people have a vested interest in, and people don't always agree with us. And we know that. Yep. We understand that. We like you said, we kind of expect litigation sometimes, right? Yeah. You just expect that we're going to have to do educational pieces, and if there's any another time that you want to come back on and talk, and say, hey, Tom, we got to talk about this. Sure. You're coming back on.
Northwestern Energy does a lot of great things for the environment. We just don't know how to let the public know about that, as I had said, and we need to improve.
That might be our down home roots too. We don't always just brag about ourselves, and I think that's something that we're probably not that good at, which if you don't brag about yourself, nobody knows, and we don't need to do stuff in secret. So I want to brag on you a little bit and thank you for what you're doing, and keep taking care of those rivers and the lands, and thank you so much for that.
Got a good team behind me.
All right, Sady Babcock was our guest. Thanks for joining us on The Outlet.
That's a wrap on this week's episode of The Outlet. For more information and weekly energy updates, like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or visit northwesternenergy.com.